This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. I'm sitting here in the cellar of Closson Chase in Prince Edward County with none other than winemaker Deborah Paskus. How are you today, madam?
I'm well, thank you.
Deborah, I wondered if you could tell me a little bit about your introduction to wine. If you can remember your very first taste of wine. Was wine part of your life when you were growing up?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. The first liquor I ever had, and it wasn't wine, was probably when I was about 21. And I think that I got more interested in wine working in restaurants. So I would be a waiter, and people would order all kinds of different things. And sometimes they'd have wine left over, they'd suggest you have it. I remember tasting wine for the first time and not liking it at all. So.
Can you remember the first wine that you tasted?
Yeah, sure. I think it was something like Oste Spamente or Isabella or Mertus or something like that, and I just hated it.
So how did you find yourself working in the position of winemaker for such an esteemed winery as Closson Chase?
Well, Closson Chase is a partnership, so I've been making wine for a long time. Sonia is a friend of mine, that's Sonia Smith and Seton McLean. And we had a dinner in Toronto where Sonia and Seton were at the dinner, and Seton said to me, anytime you're thinking of doing business or if you want to do something on your own, let me know. So a year later I let him know. And the county was the place that I chose.
Now, you had been making wine previous to working at Closson Chase, though. How did you become involved in winemaking?
Well, that's a bit of an accident. I went back to school when I was 35, specifically to work in a vineyard. And so I did that. I got my job in the vineyard. And I met Stephen Temkin, and Stephen and I made wine for a period of time. But when I met him initially, his feelings were that Ontario just was never going to make a good wine. It would be all right, but not good. And my feeling was that the vineyard wasn't delivering the winery enough quality in the grapes for them to move that step ahead. And so he said, well, then let's do an experiment and see if your ideas pan out. So that's how Temkin Paskus started. But we couldn't get a winemaker to commit to making the wine in a more hands-off way. So they wanted to strip it, filter it. They didn't want to keep it in barrel long. They didn't want to use a natural yeast. There's a resistance there. And one of the places that we made wine and said, well, make it yourself if you're so smart. So we did.
But you went on to make some wines that people still speak of to this day.
Right.
How did that come about? Was it luck? Was it chance? You suddenly discovered this procedure in the winemaking, in your winemaking technique that just happened to work with the fruit that you had?
I think, sure, it's luck. It's amount of time and exposure with the vineyard that you're working at. The first year you spend in a vineyard, you don't know anything about it. You don't know anything about the fruit. You don't know anything about the season. In fact, you know nothing. And over time, you get to be familiar with things. Some things become intuitive. They click. Things start to click together. And I think if you don't have an anticipation or an expectation, then you allow yourself to go, okay, that works, okay, that doesn't work, okay, that works, that doesn't. And slowly you just bring in a portfolio for yourself. Plus the basic philosophy, which is a Burgundian philosophy, stay out of it. It's not about you, it's about the vines, it's about the wine. Try not to interfere. It's like babysitting. If something goes wrong, sure, then you have to get in there and save things. Otherwise, stay out of it.
Now, if you were to speak to an underlying philosophy that has guided you as you've been winemaking throughout the years, both at Taws, at Temkin Paskus, Taws, and then at Closson Chase, what would you say that was?
I think the underlying philosophy for me is to always be open to change, so that you're prepared to not have a preconception of things. When you move from Taws to Closson Chase, so completely different areas, then you have to be open to thinking, okay, some of the skills that I picked up in Niagara may not apply here. And I made that mistake. A lot of the times I would think, well, it worked in Niagara, why won't it work here? It didn't. And so I had to sort of take that humbling experience and say to myself, just stay open and the land will speak to you, the vines will speak to you, you'll be fine.
Now you're just about to bottle the 2009 Pinot Noir. Tell us a little bit about that, about how that assemblage is coming together, and how you feel the vintage is going to be once it gets into bottle.
Well, the vintage has a few advantages. One is that the people that are managing the vineyard have had some experience now with winemaking, because you need enough barrels in the cellar that you can look at different woods, you can look at how the wine behaves during a fermentation. So we have some experience, like some knowledge under our belt about previous years. We also came off of 2007, which was a tremendous year, and it gave us an opportunity to do some more interesting things with the fruit and not be so safe. So 2009 we had quite a bit of Pinot Noir. We have 21 barrels. And we could expand and push against the walls of being a little bit safe because we only have so much wine. And so I think that the vintage, the 2009 vintage, is going to represent steps forward that we've made at Closson Chase, because we're older, because we have more fruit, because we have some experience.
Well, I'm looking forward to actually tasting the final product. I've been doing some barrel tasting today, and the wines were showing incredibly well. A lot of that, I'm sure, is to do with the full moon last night. But
I agree.
But thank you very much for spending time with us at Good Food Revolution.
Oh, my pleasure.